All right, so in a previous video, we talked about how to actually create these different views, but now what I would like to show is how to create um, the, the dimensions that would go onto them. So this is pretty straightforward. Typically, the rules for dimensioning. Okay, typically the rules for dimensioning are that we are going to keep dimensions between views. We are going to not duplicate any dimensions. So, only needed dimensions. We also want to try to avoid crossing extension lines. And with these kind of things in mind, we're pretty much set to do things all right. So what we're really going to need to show on this is we're going to need to show the height of these little legs that are sticking out. We're going to need to show the depth of this part that's in the back. We're going to need to show the height of the overall object. So I'm just going to go through this. And really, we're going to need about 6 dimensions for this. You won't always know how many it is, but you have to keep just adding them and looking at it and saying, if I were going to make this in a shop or I were going to make this out of wood, what other sizes do I need to know in order to be able to create this thing? So if we start right here with the front view, we can immediately see that we can show the height here. So I'm going to kind of pencil these in. Remember, we draw our extension lines first. We can emulate the spacing that we're going to use. We don't want our extension lines actually touching the object, so we're leaving a tiny gap there. And this is going to go from the top to the bottom here. And we want to come out about 3/8 of an inch, so that's about a square and a half. So our dimension is going to go right in here. But that's for our overall dimension. We want to put some smaller dimensions inside there too. So I'm going to extend these lines out. We'll figure out where we're going to put stuff later. We also want to show how big it is from here to here. So I'm going to put that on there as well. And let's see, what else do we need to know? We want to know the width of this. Now, I said we want to avoid crossing lines, extension lines, if possible. And we are able to do that here because instead of drawing an extension line out of here, we can draw it from this top part up here. I'm going to just erase a little bit so it's a little less muddy. So we can have an extension line that comes from here out, maybe an extension line here. And then we're also going to want to show the width of some of these parts that are inside here. So we'll have another extension line there and there. And let's see, anything else? Oh, we need to show how deep this thing goes. So you can't always put dimensions between the views, but what you can do is put them up here. You just want to avoid putting them on the outside of the drawing. That's usually not good. So I'm going to have an extension line that comes off there. Remember, we want that gap. So this is going to show how far back, how deep this object goes. So we're going to put an extension line there. We want to show how deep it's going to be for that edge there and this one here. So keep watching here and you're going to start to see how this takes shape because you might be like, what the heck is he doing? Don't try to do this along with me. Make sure that you are just watching and then coming back later. So now that we have our extension lines on here, what we're going to do next is we're actually going to pencil in our dimension lines. If you remember, the extension lines extend off the object. The dimension lines go between the extension lines, and they will ultimately have the arrows on them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say to myself, all right, well, I'm definitely going to put a dimension from here to here for this part. So I'm going to draw a light line in there. I'm definitely going to put a dimension from the bottom to the top here to show the overall height. So I'll draw, another light line in there because we're going to write numbers in these eventually, but we're just adding some lines to remember where we're going to put the dimensions. We're going to do a dimension from here to here. Let's see, from here to here. And we're going to do one from here to here. So that's really just one line across there, but we're going to have a number in here and a number in there. We're also going to do an overall width. So we'll put a line in there. And just pay attention to this for now. Don't follow along so that you can, do this yourself at the end and you'll see the big picture before you start doing it yourself. We're going to have a dimension line from here. Actually, let's do it from the back to the front. So we'll dimension this length, which is the distance from here to here, because that's a solid chunk of material, and we'll dimension the overall length. We don't actually need to do these last gaps, because if you give the overall length and you give part of the other one, someone could figure out this distance if they needed to. So it's okay to leave those off. And what we're going to see is we're going to have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're actually going to have 7 dimensions. I thought we were going to have 6, but it's going to be 7. And you don't need dimensions on all the views. This is going to be enough dimensions because we're showing, like, for instance, the distance from here to here with this dimension up here. And that's going to make more sense when I put the numbers in. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to look and I'll say, we remember that 1 square equals 1/4 of an inch. So that means this is 1, 2, 3 squares. So that's 3/4 of an inch. So I can either erase a little bit and write 3/4. Or I can just write over the line and then darken the lines later. So that's what I may do for the rest of these. This one, from here to here, how many squares? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's 6/4, which if we reduce the top and the bottom, we see that comes out to, what is that, 3/2. Well, 3/2 is really 1 1/2. So you can convert this any way you like. We can talk about different ways to do that, but this distance is going to be 1.5 inches. So I'm going to write that, erase some of these lines so it's not confusing. 1 1/2. Okay. And then we'll look up here. Let's see. Let's do this small one first. That's 1 2/4, which comes out to 1/2. So like I said, you don't have to erase. Whoops, not 1/3. What are you doing there? 1/2. Or you can just write over the line and then darken around it. This is going to be 1 2 3 4/4 is just 1. The distance all the way across here. So we can also think of this way. This is 1 2 3 4. So that's 1 inch. 1 2 3 4. That's 2 inches. So this whole distance here is going to be 2 inches. And I'm going to write this offset a little bit so it's a little clearer. And you'll see when I fill these in how I can make all those dimensions really pop and look good. Up here, we're going to go 1 2 3. So this one's also 3/4. And 1 2 3 4. That's 1 inch plus another 1/4 of an inch. So I'll write that down here. We got 1 1/4 of an inch. Now it's time to clean things up. So I know that this distance, I don't need this little extension line extending way out there. I'm going to erase a little bit. And now you start to see, well, this is getting a lot clearer, right? What is he actually dimensioning to and from? And we'll do that over here. This extension line is unnecessary. It goes too far. So is this one. So I don't need those extending quite so far. I don't need these extending quite so far. Just a little bit beyond the dimension line here. I'll darken that, leave a gap for the number, clean that there a little bit. And then this extension line, though, that can stay, that can stay. We're still leaving those gaps between the extension line and the object. Make those a little darker, put this in here, leave the gap for the number. Okay, down here we'll do the same thing. So a lot of this ends up being repetitive at a certain point. And our last step is to just add our arrows. So we'll come in here, add arrows long and thin. Sometimes you're not going to have a lot of room. If you want, you can actually, for small dimensions like this, if you don't have the room, you can flip and put the dimension lines on the outside so that your arrows are on the outside instead of trying to cram them into the inside here. So I'm going to do that actually down here too. We'll leave that one. Now, you know what? We'll just get rid of that. And we're just going to put our arrowhead there, and we'll have another one on the outside with the arrowhead. Long and thin as much as possible. Now, I'm not using my technical drawing tools, so that's why these look all kind of fat and dark. When you're using your technical drawing tools, of course, your lines are going to be nice and crisp and sharp and thin. But this is just a sketch. So this doesn't really matter. And then we can clean up any other extra. These were our projection lines from our other video. And we can see all of the different parts of this. It looks really nice. This will be super easy now to translate into an actual technical drawing using our drawing instruments, because we've basically already done it once. We planned it. Now we're going to do that primo, beautiful, perfect drawing where we just construct this. And that will be a lot like the drawings we've done so far. This is like the drawing I've been giving you so far out of the book. You're just going to duplicate this onto your piece of green paper, and everything will be all set. So this is how you create dimensions on a sketch. In a previous video that I will link to in the description is how to actually draw this from your isometric view here. So take a look at that video if you need it, and I hope this helps.